What's up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Gamescript. We're looking at the Los Angeles Chargers versus the Denver Broncos on Thursday Night Football, and the Broncos are the underdogs in this one, but should they be? I'm going to get into it right after this. What's up, guys? Simon Edwards at Pumacom here with Heatseeker Sports, and you're watching Gamescript. We're looking at the Los Angeles Chargers versus the Denver Broncos. We're playing in Los Angeles, and the Broncos are 2.5-point dogs in this one. And that's an interesting situation because it seems like the Denver Broncos are in a better spot, especially with a lot of these injuries to the Chargers. And I'm going to get into that in a minute. Make sure to hit that like button. Get me to 30 likes to put out a shorter video later on, and make sure to hit the subscribe button. I'm trying to get to 1,400 subscribers. Only need about 50 left or something around there, I believe. So help me get there before the end of week 16. I appreciate that. And this is going to be an interesting game. This is a division game. It's also a game with a lot of playoff implications. If the Broncos win this game, they have a 99% chance of making the playoffs. They're currently at 92%. If they lose, they have an 85% chance. If the Chargers win this one, they have a 97% chance of making the playoffs. They're currently at 87%. And if they lose, they have a 73% chance, according to NFL.com. So big playoff implications in this one. The Chargers have been banged up recently. They haven't really been playing too well recently. Justin Herbert has been dealing with an ankle injury on top of everything. And let's take a look at some of these injuries that they've been dealing with. We'll hop over to our injury tab here. First, let's go through the Denver Broncos since I'm already here. Denver Broncos, we're looking at Jaleel McLaughlin is out. That's good for Javonte Williams and Audric Estime. It's kind of torn on which one of those guys is going to take on the bigger load. They've been swapping between the three running backs throughout the season, but I would not be surprised if Estime has the bigger opportunity in this game. But I do expect the running back from Denver to have a decent role in this one. Looking at a left tackle for Denver is on IR. Apart from that, Riley Moss is the other big one. Riley Moss is out in this one. That's going to be matchup advantage for the Chargers at the right cornerback position. Is where he's at. So the left receiver would have a matchup advantage there. Looking at Alex Singleton on the linebacker core is out on IR, and Delarian Turner-Yell is out for the safety. So the secondary is pretty banged up there. The biggest part of that is Riley Moss being out. On top of that, Surtain was questionable for a portion of the week. He's dealing with an ankle injury too, and there was a lot of talk about whether or not he would be able to play this week, but he does not currently have an injury designation, but he should be banged up. So that's going to be an edge to the Chargers as well. But let's take a look at the Chargers injuries that we're dealing with here. If you see on their offense, they have a ton of guys on IR. On top of that, Disley is out this week. Jalen Reagor is also out on IR now. Brendan Rice on IR as well, but he hasn't really done anything this year. J.K. Dobbins on IR still. Hayden Hurst still on IR. So Stone Smart is going to be set up at the tight end position. Zion Johnson is questionable at that left guard. And, just dealing some depth issues on the rest of the offensive line. As far as the defense, look at all these injuries on the defense. We got Perryman is questionable. I think he missed a couple weeks Agbonia is questionable. We're looking at Asante Samuel Jr. on IR. I believe he's out for the season. Cam Hart, though, is out in this one. That's a big edge for the Broncos. Elijah Molden is doubtful, and we got all sorts of guys on the IR list here. So really banged up on the defense for the Chargers. That gives another edge to the Broncos. I think the Broncos have the injury edge here. So both teams are going to be missing key components of their secondary. Is a key point here to keep in mind as we break down this player pool and take a look at this game. This is, Bo Nix has been, struggling a little bit recently. It's been a few weeks since we've seen one of his marquee performances, and with Bo Nix, there was talk for a little while there that he was going to be competitive for the Rookie of the Year with Jaden Daniels, but I think that talk has died down in recent weeks as we haven't seen him do a whole lot. He did have a pretty good win against Cleveland a couple weeks back. That was a 41-32 win. Great game with Jameis Winston, but he only had 14 DraftKings points in that one. I think that was primarily the defense getting 2 pick sixes against Jameis Winston. He's had a few significant fantasy weeks going over 20 DraftKings points multiple times. He's a guy that's capable of putting up some points for us. Bo Nix is definitely a guy we want to keep in our player pool. Justin Herbert, despite his recent struggles, is a guy that we can keep in our player pool, but I think he does struggle against Denver. I'll probably have a lesser exposure to him. He's dealing with that ankle injury on top of that. If we see his ownership going significantly low, I'm recording this on very early on Thursday morning at the ass crack of dawn, so I haven't gotten any ownership projections that I really trust. So I'm not sure where his ownership is going to be, but it really just depends on what your game script is. If you're going to use Justin Herbert, I'm looking at a projection that I don't really trust either. That has him as the highest projected guy in the slate, and I'm not really buying that. Courtland Sutton, I think, is set up to have a nice game here. I talked about it earlier with Cam Hart being out. That's going to leave that secondary in rough shape. And let's take a look at where that edge is for Sutton real quick. Sutton is running 51% of his routes in the left side of the field. And that injury is to Hart, who's at the left side. So that's a direct impact for Courtland Sutton with that Cam Hart injury. On top of likely being the guy that was going to be on Sutton the most anyways, that's going to put Sutton in an even better spot going against Fulton instead for the majority of the game, most likely. So advantage to Sutton there. I wouldn't be surprised to see him as the highest owned guy for a captain option on the slate in this one. Lad McConkey is also going to be a contender for that. He should largely escape Surtain on this one, and that's going to put McConkey in a good position to have a decent game. The Broncos have been more susceptible to the slot position. Take a look at some of the points that they're allowing. They are allowing 11.5 DraftKings points a game to the slot. They've been more susceptible to the wideouts. They've been giving up 23.2 DraftKings points a game to wideouts. That's the last 4 games. And Denver has been Chargers have been giving up 24.8 to wideouts for that Sutton mention there, and 16.9 to the slot. So that'll be good for Vele on top of that. So we'll get into him in a minute. McConkey, Quentin Johnston is going to be up probably against Surtain the most. I would guess that would be a potential shadow situation. depending on how much respect they're going to give to Quentin Johnston. Johnston's last game against Denver, he only had 5.2 DraftKings points. So I'm assuming that, maybe that was the situation back in week 6 when they faced off against Denver. But yeah, Johnston should be, he already has difficulty catching balls, but that could put him in an even rougher spot in this game against the Broncos. Despite the Broncos giving up 24.8 DraftKings points recently, I think that's more of Surtain. I think Surtain missed a few games here. Let me take a look at Pro Football Reference. We'll take a look at that to make sure. Take a look at Surtain's recent game logs here. All right, so yeah, we were looking at Surtain was inactive weeks. Get the wrong Surtain there. Let's take a look at his injury history recently. All right, so he was inactive in week 7. So looks like he's been active the last few weeks after all. So yeah, I don't know why the Broncos have been giving up so many points to the wideout position. Let's take a look at some of the recent history and go back to this tab here. Recent history against the Broncos. Let's see which guys have been successful. Michael Pittman last week had 10.8 DraftKings points. Jerry Jeudy had that big game, 43.5. That's probably skewing it. We had Jacoby Myers had 25.1 DraftKings points. Prior to that, they were pretty good against receivers. Zay Flowers had 32.7. I think that was the last big week against them. But that gives you an idea. So recently, they've been susceptible to wideouts. Big week by Jerry Jeudy is probably skewing that number a little higher than it normally would be. But Quentin Johnston, he's not a very good receiver. He has trouble catching the ball, and he could struggle in this one against Surtain. But he's a guy, if we see his ownership low enough, knowing that Denver has had some struggles against wide receivers recently, that would make him interesting. All right, so moving on to Javonte Williams. Javonte Williams is in a difficult matchup against the Chargers, but I would expect them to I expect Denver to be in control of this game, so maybe they have a little bit more success with their running game. I just think with all those injuries to the Chargers defense, I think the Broncos are going to win this game. I would guess that they're going to be in control for a large portion of this game, so maybe they're trying to get their run game on track in this one. Javonte Williams, would not be surprised to see him do a decent amount of work in this one. At least get the opportunities to do work in this one. And the other part of that puzzle is going to be Estime. Estime is pretty cheap this week. Get a look at his flex price. Estime is looking at about 5,600, and there's nothing really to indicate that Javonte Williams would be getting the bigger workload in this one over Estime. They've been rotating back and forth between these running backs all season, and Javonte Williams really hasn't done anything impressive, but neither has Estime. But if we think that maybe one of these running backs has a decent game, it's an ownership play. It's if you think Javonte Williams, if he ends up being lower owned, he could be interesting. Audric Estime, same situation. If he gets too low owned, and you get the price discount with Estime this week. Gus Edwards is losing a big portion of his backfield to Kamani Vidal, the rookie. We saw it last week. Rookie snapped him, and he only had 10 attempts. very few attempts. Last time he went over 10 attempts was back in week 2, where he had 18 against Carolina. He's also in a difficult matchup. As I mentioned, the Broncos are only giving up 21.4 DraftKings points a game to the running back position. They're more susceptible to the pass catching backs, and that is going to be Vidal. He's at 6,800. He's actually expensive, which could keep his ownership lower. But if we think that the Chargers are playing from behind and they need a pass catching back, that would make Vidal interesting. He's had 3 targets in his last game. His last game against Denver is where he scored his only touchdown of the year. He had 13 DraftKings points in that one. But, maybe this isn't the breakout week for Vidal, but I do expect him to get a bigger portion of the workload potentially this week. So Josh Palmer with the secondary being banged up, I would think that if Surtan's on Johnson, that's going to set up Josh Palmer to be the guy, maybe that gets a little bit more work on the outside. We looking at Lad McConkey in the slot. Palmer, I would guess, is going to be the guy with the advantageous matchup on the outside. So Josh Palmer definitely in play this week. Dicker, the kicker, he's going to be in play. I had him as part of my underdog high-low in this week's matchup. Like, it's situation where look at the field goals that he's made, right? He's made over 2 field goals in most of the games that he's played. He's gone over 3 or higher in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks. So 5 out of 14 weeks, he's gone higher than 3 field goals. I have him going higher than 3 field goals in my underdog pick 'em, and that is causing it to go up to a 56 times your money. If you guys want to get in on it with me, check out my short. I put out a short a little while ago that should be up by the time this show goes up. Let's see if I can take a look real quick here. All right, I'm going to switch over to my Underdog tab. I'm going to go over this with you guys. If you sign up for an Underdog account, use the promo code SEEK. You're going to get a 50% deposit match up to $1,000. You're going to want to do that because Playoff Best Ball has started too. I'm going to be putting out a bunch of shows for that. As you can see, Gus Edwards, I had him over or under going lower than 10.5 for his longest rush. I intended to do that 10.5 for rushing attempts, but I don't mind having that as his longest rush either. If you swap this out for rushing attempts, it pretty much is the same thing. Kamani Vidal, I had him going higher than 9.5 first half receiving yards. I think that he is going to be active in this one. I think that, they're going to rely on him in the passing game a little bit with the, like the situation with, Surtain being in that secondary. I think they might rely on Vidal a little bit more in this game than normal. And Sutton, I have him going higher than 5.5 receptions. That's a number that he's hit in multiple games this year as well. To be exact, he's gone higher in 6 out of the last 7 on top of that. So that's a number that I think that he should be able to hit. Bo Nix, I had him going higher than 4.5 rushing attempts. He's been less active in the rushing game recently, but he's gone higher than 4.5 rushing attempts in 9 out of 14 games. And Cameron Dicker, I had him going over higher than 2.5 field goals made. We've seen that in 5 out of 14 games, so pretty good shot of him hitting that mark in this one. Kamani Vidal, that 9.5 is first half receiving yards. That one could be the biggest long shot of this of this situation. But if you believe that Kamani Vidal is going to get a bigger workload and that they may need to rely on him in the passing game with Justin Herbert's ankle banged up and stuff like that, then Vidal hitting that 9.5 first half receiving yards could be in play for us. And that's going to juice us up to about 54 times our money on a $10 entry. That would be, $546. So that's a underdog play for this week. You can check out the short over on YouTube. Let's get into the next guy here. We got Lutz. Lutz could be active in this one as well. Lutz has had some big games, especially recently. He had that 22-point game against Vegas. He's had an 18-point game, a 16-point game. So he's had some big games. So Lutz is definitely in play. Defenses in this one, I would lean more towards the Broncos having a good showing in this one against the Chargers, who, they're low scoring in general. They don't really turn the ball over that much. It's the only problem. But look at these outputs from Denver's defense. 10 DraftKings points against Seattle, 15, 11, 16, 20, 13, 10, 20, 22. Like monster weeks by this defense. They're at 4,800, which is relatively cheap. We normally see defenses like that have a higher price tag. Even the Chargers have a $5K price tag against the Broncos here. So I would take the Broncos D over the Chargers D if I was forced to choose between those two defenses. Mims is a guy that has had some success recently. He had a 22-point game, had a 13-point game. And these are both in the last, since week 11. So the last 4 games, he's had those 2 big games. So it seems like he's being integrated a little bit more into this offense. Smart, I mentioned how they're banged up at the tight end position. He's been getting targets, 6 targets last week, 3 targets the week before that. Would not be surprised to see Stone Smart be an active part of this passing game this week. The Broncos are giving up a late 11.8 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position, so it's a middling matchup for him. So don't be surprised to see Stone Smart get some opportunities this week. Devon Bailey against the Chargers, they're giving up 16.9 DraftKings points a game to the slot. That's going to put Bailey in play this week. He's a guy that we can keep in our player pools for sure. He's at 4K. That's pretty cheap. You see some of the targets he's got recently: 4 targets, 9 targets, 5 targets, 4 targets. Only had 1 target against Indy last week. Troutman, not so much on the Broncos tight ends. They just all over the place. And on top of that, it's a difficult matchup. Chargers are only giving up 10.4 DraftKings points a game to the tight end position. Franklin, I think when it comes to the rest of these receivers, we're going to have to get into our target shares or our snap counts here. So looking at these Broncos, we can see Courtland Sutton had a 57% snap share in last week, but prior to that, he's been mostly in that 60 range. Lil Jordan Humphrey, 21%. Prior to that, about 30s, 20s, 30s, depending on how much usage Denver wants to give him this week. But, I would guess maybe he falls in that 30% range, potentially. Let's see. Other guys that we have here, Marvin Mims, only a 16% snap share last week. He's gotten as high as 23%, 25% recently. So keep that in mind if you're trying to start Marvin Mims. He doesn't have a whole lot of usage or opportunity, I should say. Troy Franklin, he's the highest out of all these secondary guys with 29%. Vele, I mentioned 38%. He's been in that 40% range for most of the season. He's been pretty consistent. Franklin has been in that high 20s range for most of the season from the looks of it. So Looks like Sutton and Vele are the two most reliable guys as far as usage that they're going to get. And then after that, it would go Franklin, Humphrey, and Mims. Mims has the explosive upside. Those other guys are going to have the opportunity potential. Chark made his debut last week, I believe. No, made his debut a few weeks ago, but he got his first targets a couple weeks ago, and then last week he had 2 targets. Chark, we can take a look at this snap share to see where Chark was at too while we're here. All right, so the Chargers, Chark only had a 9% snap share count last week. Week before he had 15. We had nothing for Rhaegar's on IR, so he doesn't really matter. Other than it's going to lead to more opportunities for, I believe, Chark. I believe Rhaegar will lead to opportunities for Chark. Josh Palmer had 39% snap share. Quentin Johnston, 38. McConkey, 42. Darius Davis only at 2% last week. He went as high as 22% a couple weeks ago. Rhaegar might help him out as well. Let's look at the depth chart while we're doing this. All right, so if we're looking at the Chargers, Darius Davis, yeah, he benefits from Rhaegar being out. He's still back up to Quentin Johnston, but if Darius Davis comes in, like for subbing out for Quentin Johnston on some spots, I would imagine that Davis will be the guy with the good matchup. So, Davis is a guy that could be one of those sneaky guys. He's got a lot of upside. Take a look at him real quick. He's only at 800. Darius Davis, he's the kick returner too, I believe. So that'll give you a opportunity to run back a kick. But Davis, 4 targets in week 14, 1 target versus Atlanta. Then he had a couple weeks with 2 targets. He's getting opportunities, and he's been good for a couple years as far as being athletic. He's very fast. If he gets an opportunity where he gets 4 targets, he could break one of those targets off for like a 50-yard touchdown or something. He's at 800. If we need salary relief, he's going to probably be a good guy for us to get that salary relief. And other than that, I don't see too much in that cheap range. Lil Jordan Humphreys at 1,000. He gets a decent amount of opportunity as well. 3 targets, 4 targets, 3 targets, 5 targets, 6 targets for a stretch there. Last couple weeks, he's been quiet, though, not getting many opportunities. But, he's a guy that could get unexpected opportunities anytime. So let's start building this lineup. Make sure to hit that like button. Give me the 30 likes. I'll put my favorite plays in the comment section when I hit that 30 likes after I have more opportunity to look at ownership and projections and stuff like that. And make sure to hit subscribe. Get me to 1,400. I'm very close to hitting that mark. I think I need about 40 left, and I want to get there before the end of week 16 to keep plugging away at my ultimate goal is getting 2,000 before the end of the season. But I need to start with 1,500. I need to get 40 more subscribes to hit that mark. So help me out if you haven't subscribed already. All right, so let's look at the captain here. I think Bo Nix or Courtland Sutton will probably be the most popular captain. I would lean more. I would think that Nix is going to be the higher owned guy. He has struggled recently. You know what? Let's put Sutton. Sutton will probably be the highest owned captain. Going to go with Nix. I think he's got more upside than Herbert this week. I'm going to throw McConkey in there too. Going to scroll down here. I'm going to put Dicker in there. I think Dicker is going to get a lot of opportunity this week. So that's going to leave us with 5,400 per guy. I talked up Estime earlier about how he could get some opportunity. Smart and Mims are pretty cheap. Vele is really cheap for his opportunity, so let's put Vele in here. That's gonna leave us with 6,800. That puts us in Vidal range. It puts us in Palmer range. I think it puts us in a pretty good spot here if we wanted to go with that run game, or if we wanted to go with Palmer. You could also, throw in one of the defenses and leave some salary. You could go double kicker in this one. This should be a lower scoring game. I expect this to either be a lower scoring close game, or I expect Denver to run away with it. I think it could go either way, but I think Denver wins this one. So if you're looking to take a money line bet on a dog, I would take Denver in this one. But yeah, so that leaves some good opportunities. No struggles there with building a Sutton lineup. So, that kind of gives us an indication that this is going to be an easier slate to build lineups for. But let's clear that out. Or actually, let's swap. If we swap Nix for Sutton in the captain, leaves us with 6,600. Still in a really good spot. That's Palmer range, and then you have Estime, and you have those kicker and defense options. So if we wanted to go a different direct, I mean, I don't really think it's going to be easy to get any captain that you want. If we wanted to take out. If you wanted to put Herbert in this lineup as well, maybe we take out Vele. Let's put in Herbert. That leaves us in that 800 mark. That's where Darius Davis is at. Fisk might get some work in this one. Fisk could be a like a touchdown option, with being the backup to Stone Smarter, or at least the second tight end. So Fisk will have opportunity to be in play. He's at 600. Darius Davis, either one of those guys. I don't mind the dumpster dive on either one of those guys if we want to use an expensive captain and try to throw in all these expensive guys as well. Let's put a different game script here. Let's say that both teams struggle to put up points but can move the ball. This could easily be a kicker captain week. If we put Dicker in the captain, let's put Nix and Herbert. Let's get all the volume guys in there. It's going to leave us with 3,100. This will probably be a popular build for the lineups that have Dicker in the captain, but you can use Franklin in that one. He would make the most sense. And then if you wanted to leave salary on the table and get a little bit different, maybe go with Krull or Humphrey or Chark, any one of these guys. They're all going to have probably the same roll the dice type of situation with getting points out of them. If you wanted to go double kicker, I don't think we'd be able to pull that off without taking out a significant guy. If you think that, maybe Javonte Williams plays a bigger role, I would plug him in over Herbert. Leaves you with Lutz as a double kicker option. Chargers D, Broncos D on top of that. Let's clear this out. Let's get a Sutton lineup with Nix. Let's throw in Williams in this one too. Let's get McConkey. Leaves us with 4,300 per guy. I like Dicker. 3,200 per guy. Puts us in that Franklin, Adkins, Chark range. So, I mean, that's a good preview for like how things might play out. Let's do one more with McConkey in the captain. If McConkey's in the captain, I'm not necessarily thinking that we need Herbert because it could be PPR opportunity. Let's go with Nix. Let's assume the rushing upside there with Nix. Let's put Sutton in there as well. And let's get Williams in there. I think if McConkey is the captain, Sutton and Nix's upside is reduced by Williams maybe being used more. Like maybe they're using the running game a little bit more. Let's get Dicker in there because Dicker is taking away those opportunities from us for scoring touchdowns. We could swap out Williams too with Estime. That's going to leave us with 5,300. That puts us in Lutz range or both the defenses. You could go with either one of those defenses and Mims. We got plenty of options there. Estime, Williams. Keep an eye on the beat reports. See if there's any indication on which one of those guys is going to get more usage this week. Williams, I think they're fed up with Williams at this point, and they were talking up. Sean Payton was talking up using Estime more earlier in the season. But, as we've seen from his usage, let's go over to the fantasy pros again here and look at the usage on running backs. Let's get an idea of where these guys were at recently. Javonte Williams, 34%. Estime, 13% last week. I think back in, several weeks ago, we had Estime at 26% and Williams at 17%. I think Estime fumbled in that game. What was that? Week 10. Let's go back over here. Week 10. Yeah, Estime had 14 attempts for 53 yards. He didn't fumble in that game. I wonder what Williams' situation was in that game. Williams. Yeah, I don't know why Williams was in the doghouse in that one. I mean, I guess they were just wanting to try something different in that one. I don't know the context there, but it could happen any week. Like I said, it could happen where they decide to give Estime more run than Javonte Williams. It could go with a hot hand. Maybe Estime breaks off a decent run in his first attempt. Anything could happen to lead to a scenario where Estime would be the guy with the more opportunity. If we see Estime's ownership is going to be low, that's where we're going to want to potentially start him over Javonte Williams, or at least have exposure to Estime. I wouldn't put them together in a lineup, but Estime or Javonte, if you want to use that running game and use that game script where the Broncos control this one. It is a difficult matchup. The Chargers are only giving up 19.5 DraftKings points a game to the running back position, so keep that in mind. But if you want one of those running backs and you notice that Estime's ownership is going to be significantly lower, that will put him in play. I think the takeaway from this game, I think it's going to either be lower scoring or Denver's going to run away with it. I think that Denver's going to win outright, and I think that Sutton and Nix are going to have decent games in this one. I think Nix, we're going to start to see him come alive again here. I think Sutton, we should see a nice game out of. I think McConkey has good potential this week. I mean, I'm not stating anything that like is groundbreaking there, but I just think that that's the game, that way the game plays out. I think that Dicker has potential for a decent game. I think a kicker will make it into the optimal this week. I'll just leave you at that. So keep that in mind. Good luck, guys. Hit that subscribe button. Get me to 1,400, and make sure to hit the like button so I can put out my picks in the comment section later on. And check out the Underdog short. Get in on Underdog with me for playoff best ball. We're coming up. Get your $1,000 deposit bonus now. We don't know how long those deposit bonuses are going to last, so take advantage of it while it's there. Use the promo code SEEK. They're going to match you $1,000. They're going to match you up to 50% deposit match for up to $1,000. 50% deposit match up to $1,000. It's 2 a.m. when I'm recording this, 2:30. So sorry, guys. My brain is not spitting out the words right here. So good luck, guys, and I will see you later on.